So a few years ago, my family went down to Disneyland, and we were standing in line to get on a ride at California Adventure, actually. And suddenly, my 6-year-old daughter froze with fear. She didn't want to get on the ride, and it surprised us because this was not a very scary ride, and we had been on much scarier rides all afternoon. And so I knew that if I could talk her into getting on the ride, that it would probably only take about 20 seconds for her to overcome her fear and decide she liked the ride. And so I did it, and it worked. But it didn't take 20 seconds, it took exactly 14 seconds. And during those 14 seconds, you could see the 4 stages of grief on her face. My daughter. If only it were so easy for the rest of us, right? 14 seconds of courage. But anyway, I know a little bit about freezing myself. I'm a songwriter and a performer. I have frozen in my songwriting for months and for years. And I have frozen on stage. And it seems to me that more and more people are freezing in everyday life in today's world because of anxiety, because of overwhelmment, maybe a sense of purposelessness, especially young people. And yet, I think we know that that's not our natural state. Like that's what happens when something has gone wrong. I mean, think about when you were all kids. You'd have these long afternoons of uninterrupted play. And you would lose all track of time. You would get completely lost in your own world. It was effortless. You didn't have to think about how to play. It just happened. Now, we're finding now that that is actually when children learn the very most, is during those stretches. It's like their brains are firing on all cylinders. And one of the reasons why is that as they get absorbed in their play, they lose a sense of self. They forget about themselves completely. So there's zero self-consciousness, and that sets the stage for learning. Now, as adults, we want that kind of productivity in our work, right? So we talk about things like flow or deep work. But long before any of us ever thought about those concepts, we just played as kids. And I'm not sure about this, but that might be why Dr. Seuss said adults are just obsolete children and the hell with them. I don't know if that's why he said it, but anyway, you've all seen the Pixar movie Monsters, Inc., right? Monsters, Inc. is about a world of adorable monsters. They go into children's bedrooms at night, make them scream, and extract the energy from their screams, take it back to the world to power their cities. Now, you remember the Billy Crystal character? Does anyone remember his name? Mike Wazowski, big eyeball. Mike Wazowski wants to be a comedian, but he's working at a scream factory. And one day, Mike Wazowski inadvertently makes a child laugh instead of scream. And what do they discover? They discover by accident that children's laughter has 10 times more energy than their screams. And that changes everything. Suddenly, Mike Wazowski becomes the top producer overnight just by doing what he has always loved. But that idea of something having 10 times the energy, I felt that in my life. I think you have felt that in your life, and we wonder why we don't feel it more often. When I was a kid, 6 or 7 years old, I heard a song by the Beach Boys one day, and the song's called God Only Knows. For those who don't know the song, it's God only knows what I'd be without you. God only knows what I'd be without you. You know that song. When the Beach Boys do it, it's beautiful. The last 60 seconds, they go into this sort of round of vocals. There's a melody and a counter melody and harmonies. And I still think it's one of the most beautiful pieces of music ever. And I'm 7 years old, and I hear that part of the song, and it completely moves me. It's like the first time that something like that had happened to me. But in a way, I couldn't understand what was going on. But it felt like it was breaking my heart in a good way. And the same thing happened with other music. And pretty soon I'm thinking about music a lot. Like, I'm very curious about it. And we had an old piano, and I didn't know how to play, but I would try to recreate these songs on the piano and try to recreate the feeling those songs brought. And it was interesting, and it was effortless, and it completely held my attention. Now, why is that a good thing? Because we become proficient at that which holds our attention, especially when there's that kind of energy involved. We get good at the things we spend a lot of time with. And maybe that means one day we'll make a ton of money doing it and change the world, but that's not why we do it in the beginning. And we know it. We do it because it feels like play. Now, there's this great quote by Howard Thurman. He said, "Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive." So what makes you come alive? I know people for whom teaching a class makes them come alive. They love it. Or restoring an old car, or thinking about how the human body works, or climbing the face of a mountain. And when they do it, or when they just scheme about how they're going to do it from their cubicles, or their desk at school, or their seat on the bus, they come alive. And then it trickles down into other parts of their lives. Now, we're learning about this as well. People who have hobbies live longer. They have lower blood pressure. They have better relationships. Here's the most interesting one of all. People with hobbies are more successful in their careers, even when the careers are not related to the hobbies. Paul Hawken said this interesting thing. Always leave enough time in your life to do something that makes you happy, satisfied, even joyous. That has more of an effect on economic well-being than any other single factor. Now, I heard this interesting thing once. It was an interview with Jim Morrison. He's the lead singer of The Doors, the 60s band The Doors. And he's kind of the poster child for the 60s rock and roll lifestyle, right? Leather pants and no shirt. He died when he was 27 years old, and about 9 months before he died, a journalist asked him, if you could do it all over again, would you change anything? And his answer was, if I had it to do over again, I would probably go for the more quiet, undemonstrative little artist plodding away in his own garden trip. This is Jim Morrison. Now, what I think he's saying is there's the craft, and then there's the success that comes when we do the craft well, and that brings audience, fame, celebrity, lifestyle. He's saying, I had them all, and it was the craft that fueled me. Just let me sit in my garden and write my poems, write my songs, make my films. So I found myself over the last few years trying to figure out what that thing is for me, but also what is that thing for the people in my life that I love. Because I found that when I understand what that thing is, what animates the people I care for, I understand them. So I found myself coming up with these questions that are kind of designed to get to the heart of that question. So I'll just go ahead and ask the audience a few of these questions, and you can consider these questions for yourself. First question is, if you had as much money as Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos combined, you did not have to worry about money, and you knew that whatever you did with your life, it would be impossible for you to fail, what would you do? My wife said she would restore old homes. My sister-in-law said she'd open a restaurant. One of my sons said he would write Pixar movies. Okay? So the second question is, if you could somehow push a button and make the world stop anytime you wanted, like a pause button, but you could keep operating, what would you do with all that time? Once you got caught up on your laundry and your sleep and your reading, what would you do with that time? Now, the last question, which is the simplest question, is what do you think about when you don't have to think about anything else? Those moments when you have no deadlines, nothing competing for your attention or your thoughts, and you're just there, what do you think about? Now, I know the answer for me, but what's the answer for you? And what is it for your spouse or your best friend or your mom? What makes the people around you come alive? Joan Wash Anglin is a children's author. She said, or wrote in one of her books, a bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song. Now, we all have a song, and it may not be a hit song, and it may not get us on the cover of a magazine, but that's not why we sing. We sing because it makes us come alive. And what the world needs, even more than another hit song, is people who have come alive. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.